every sign of male sexuality is a real threat. Like people getting freaked the fuck out.
But you know the old expression, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. The wish of this group over here to go back to Christian values is now in conflict with the group over there that wants greater liberal values. So we have just added another conflict.
If you tell the truth, then you'll get crucified, symbolically.
I don't take quite the same lesson from the story of Jesus, because I don't believe he was crucified for honesty. The way that he interacted with the established Jewish religion, he was a pest. He made a pest of himself.
Oh, so you have a very Jewish view on this, actually.
Don't get bored. Can you stop recording for a second?
Hello, everybody. Today we have an interesting guest here, Dr. Michael Parisa. We had a conversation 4 years ago now. It's been a while. And he's been working as a psychologist for 20 years before, has 2 PhDs, one in psychology, one in psychoanalysis. And now he's working as a coach. And since everybody these days is a coach or a psychologist, but few of them actually know what they're talking about, I think we got something today for you, because I think he does know a little bit about the subjects that are important. And yeah, hi Michael, thanks for being here.
Hey Arthur, thank you for having me. It's good to see you again. It's been a while.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So what have you been up to the last 4 years? You transitioned your career from pure psychology to coaching.
Yes, because in the United States, we're a little kind of backwards, which is to say that all licenses for psychologists are at state level. And so if you're licensed to practice psychology in California, you cannot see somebody in Arizona or New Mexico or New York or anywhere else. You can only see people who live in the state of California. And if they happen to travel outside the state for a vacation, you're not supposed to talk to them. It's like really very 19th century, 20th century, maybe. It's certainly not 21st century, where people are very mobile and everybody's on Zoom. And so, if I want to talk to somebody, you know, in New Mexico, God forbid, if it's Bolivia or, you know, or Germany, I can't do it. And I can be fined and have my license stripped. So I talked to friends and people said, you know, just give up your license. And it's scary to do that, but I did it. And now I talk to people all over the world.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm in the Philippines right now, actually. I'm not in Germany. So you know, we have 16 hours time difference.
Got it. All right.
So the last 4 years, the last time we spoke, I was basically totally at the beginning of this personal development stage, right? I even confessed to you that I never had a relationship back then, which was crazy because I started already coaching men before I even had a relationship. Looking back, I'm like, it was a bold move, but maybe I started a little bit too early. I had some psychology knowledge, but I don't think I had the relationship experience and like the dating experience yet, but that changed. And there's been a lot of cultural confrontations that I had the last years. And I want to talk a little bit about that with you. And I would like to know your opinion on that and also on the cultural shifts we've been seeing in the last years. So maybe first of all, what do you think about like the last couple of years, what's been happening socially? Do you see some kind of psychological pattern there that you find interesting?
Socially, worldwide, in the United States,
Western world.
Well, it's It's very complex, very complicated. I see, specifically with regard to men and women dating, is that, where you want to go with it? Um, it's gotten kind of crazy.
Yeah, okay. So I'm not alone with noticing that pattern.
First of all, I don't know if this is accurate. I think it's accurate. More and more people are living alone.
True.
More and more people are ending relationships. Yeah, I know in the United States, for the first time, it was about 3 or 4 years ago, I read that there are now more people living singly than living in family units. And more and more people that I talk to struggle with dating, struggle with getting together, struggle with maintaining romantic relationships. And that's both men and women. Uh, there are some people who do very well, but a lot of people are struggling um, tremendously to hold on to find partners, to make things work. Now, of course, don't forget, I am a coach and a former therapist. And so the people I see tend to be the ones who are having trouble. But statistically, I think that people are struggling more and more people are alone and struggling.
So the reason why I brought up the social aspect of this is because early on in the dating phase, when I was still in Germany, I had this experience that I was kicked out of political parties, of groups, the friend groups for cold approaching women and being honest about my sexual thoughts and feelings. So these days, as a man, I think in the US it's kind of shifted a little bit, but in Europe and Canada, you still very much have this kind of like anti-male philosophy where every sign of male sexuality is a real threat. Like people getting freaked the fuck out. And there's women who go behind the back, like you will talk to them, and they don't tell you they have a problem, and then next day you're out because you went behind your back and said, he made me feel uncomfortable, you're done. We had in Germany a couple of high profile cases. So for example, the leader of the biggest media company in Germany, there were 4 women who accused him of making them uncomfortable with his language. They did an investigation. There was 0 evidence of sexual harassment. The guy got kicked out and replaced with a woman, of course. So they ganged up on him and destroyed his career, essentially. And that's been going on again and again and again. And I wonder what your thoughts on this is. Like, why the fear of men? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have to say, what's happening in the United States, there's a swing back.
Yeah.
There's a backlash to this. So I've
Yeah.
got to add that. But yes, for years, all the talk about toxic masculinity. And I think it's so sad that men are not able to kind of own their sexuality and their natural impulses in a healthy kind of a way. Now, to a certain extent, they have themselves to blame, and thousands of years of culture in which men have dominated because they were bigger and stronger at established societies in which men dominated. And so I do think it started here in the United States with the feminist movement. And finally, women got a chance to say, hey, we don't like this. And that's fair. They're allowed to say that. But I think it went tremendously far. And I think a lot A lot of men deserve what they got, but a lot of men did not deserve it. And so I think we are in a transition phase in which men and women are finding a way to be with each other that's not the old way, but they haven't found a new way yet.
Okay, so the interesting part is now you said backlash. That's definitely going on. So I'm, of course, I have a following with young men, 25 to 35, yeah? And they are, a lot of them are developing in quite interesting ways. Let's put it this way. So the feminists who think Donald Trump is radical, well, in comparison to where young men are going these days, some of them, that's nothing. So they're going full on revoke the 19th Amendment, I think it is, take women's voting rights, because they say, well, you've declared us the enemy, so, and you screwed up society culturally, so let's take women's right away, right to vote away. And they're also going ultra conservative at times, like really going back to conservative Christianity, virgin culture, you know, waiting until marriage and these kind of things. And yeah, so I'm now alienated to a certain degree between those two ends of the spectrum, right? Because I'm not hardcore conservative. I don't believe in that like purity cult. But this progressive side, I mean, they lost me a long time ago with, you know, like all this man hate, all this like social construct thinking that doesn't make any sense. But I do think that the far right men who do go into that corner of just not taking women seriously at all and just like, shut up, woman, like go back to the kitchen. That's how they talk, right? This kind of like red pill thinking. It's just also too extreme. Yes.
Look, as I've gotten older, what I found is that I can be completely honest with women, but it has to do with timing and tact.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
I say whatever I want to women, but I also know that I'm aware of the kinds of reactions I will get. And so I don't say everything to anybody. I don't just walk. Then let me turn this off. What I've discovered, you know, as I've gotten older, it sort of gets easier. Things get simpler. Just as a side note, I believe you go through complexity to get to simplicity. Things are weird, and then they get more weird, they get strange, they get complicated, they get tremendously complex, and you work your way through it, and then finally, things get simpler. And so, at this point in my life, I say whatever I want. And when I was dating, I was just honest with who I was. But that doesn't mean I said to a woman I just met that I wanted to have sex with her.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I get it, but the thing, that's an interesting part, because you probably remember I buy into that like radical honesty philosophy, which is kind of like you're just speaking your thoughts and feelings out like they come to you, right? The reason why I was so attracted to that philosophy is because I studied hard science, right? I studied chemistry and biochemistry in university, and hard science is just a very objective view on how things are. So it's not, I make the rules, you look at nature and you derive your conclusions from that. And then sure, you can like try your own strategy to manipulate nature, even though that mostly backfires. So that's funny, because chemistry is a very, very like artificial science. And with time, I came to the conclusion that most of what they're doing is totally backfiring. They could just derive things from nature, derive their conclusions, and most of this artificial stuff wouldn't even be necessary. But again, it's an empirical way of thinking, right? You see something and you write it down, you publish the paper, done, right? You can't just say, well, let me fix up the numbers a bit. Like, let's play it so I get good reactions. Like, no, you just publish it how it is. And so this like radical honesty philosophy works in the same manner. So I've done that a lot. I've talked to women and accepted in that like sexual thoughts and feelings to them. And the reactions were very different. The thing is, in the end, I was working as a tutor for chemistry, right? As an independent tutor. And I had like, for example, a 17-year-old student. Now, remember, legal age in Germany is 14, which I think is way too young, but it is legal age. So you can have sex as an adult man with a 14-year-old. She was 17. So I at one time had like a sexual fantasy about this student, and I masturbated to that fantasy, right? And then I was like, oh man, that's kind of fucked up. I just kind of bit the forbidden apple there, right? We're back to Genesis 1. Don't eat the apple, don't eat the apple, and you ate it. So it happened, whatever. But technically, I don't think that's even illegal. I don't think it wouldn't even be illegal for me to have sex with her since I was a private tutor. So private tutor is not a person of authority. It's like a dancing teacher, essentially. So dancing teacher is also not a position of authority like a real school teacher. So I had a really close relationship with a student, and I knew her for a year. And she called me in a private conversation, right? And she's like, hey, I can sense something is off, right? Like, what's going on? I was like, look, if I tell you this, I'm going to get fired. So I don't know. And she's like, yeah, la, la, la. So in the end, I confessed it. And she didn't really care. And I think she was adult enough to have those kind of conversations as well. But 4 weeks later, I had like a email from the institute. It's like, you have to stop any like teaching relationships immediately. So I jumped on a call with these leaders of this institute, and they were all accusing me and like making me the sexual predator guy. And it's like, listen, guys, every single one of you sitting here had an inappropriate sexual fantasy in his life. You're just hiding it better. You're just more dishonest. That's the only difference. Not speaking it out does not make you the better person. In fact, I would say it makes you the worst person because you're a hypocrite. Yeah. If we have both the same thought and I speak it out and you don't, you might appear more socially smooth and like the better guy. But in reality, you're just you're more dishonest, I would say. So what's your thoughts on this, real quick?
Well,
dangerous topic.
No. Yeah. There's a song I like. There's a line from a song that I like. The line goes, you tried to tell me what was right, and I told you what was real. And it may be right to be honest, completely radically honest, but I also know what's real. And when you are completely honest, certain things happen.
Yes, true. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
You have to ask yourself whether.
Fair enough.
I think there's even a play. There was a famous play about radical honesty like 150 years ago.
Wow. That you have to tell me.
By August Strindberg, I believe, or Ibsen. The Wild Duck, is that Ibsen? That's Ibsen.
I don't know. Wild Dog, I have to look it up.
Yeah. I think that's the play. And it's about, about radical honesty and how complex that can be. So there you go.
Okay, but fair enough. I want to add one detail. So I asked those folks. So at that time, that was last year, and we have like peak gender ideology in schools. We have children's books that teach children that there's people who are non-binary. They teach children about gay people, whatever. I don't even have a problem with that necessarily. What pisses me off is the dishonesty, and I will show you why. So I asked them, if I go to this girl, 17-year-old, and I tell her, I just transitioned my gender. I'm now a woman and I can get pregnant. Would you kick me out if I said that? And they were like, no. And I was like, okay. So I can lie to her and that's fine. But I cannot tell the truth to her, the reality that she probably knows herself, if we're being totally honest about it. And I did come to the conclusion that yes, of course, certain things happen when you tell the truth. But first of all, you can't control that. So you're attempting to control something that's impossible. Secondly, I really do believe if you're not having an objectively real conversation about things uncensored, how they are, you're gonna find yourself in a dysfunctional conversation by necessity. And if you look at the world today, there's still no real honest conversation about sexuality. It still doesn't happen. People still point fingers at each other. Oh, the Epstein Island. You know, they want this total transparency from politicians even, but they would kill the politician if they were being honest, right? So they want honesty, but they don't want honesty. And that doesn't make fucking sense. And it honestly pisses me off at this point. Because it's like, guys, you're all pointing fingers at each other. Yeah, you all have a dark side. You all did dark shit in your life. And if you keep on crucifying people who try to get over it and who try to confess it, then you'll keep on living in a life of delusion, dishonesty, and hypocrisy, I would say.
Yes, yes, and to a certain extent, that's how life works.
Yeah.
Can you stop recording for a second?
Sure. We will resume the interview in 1 second. As you saw, Dr. Parisa asked me to stop recording because he wanted to share something with me in private that I will treat confidential. I won't share what he said. However, I also want to make this a point because I get criticized for radical honesty a lot, and now you can see where these two life philosophies clash. What he told me in private, I would have shared with you if it was about me personally. So he doesn't want to share certain things with you. He wants to keep certain things in private and not be on the internet. I want you to think about this as well. Which world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a world where people are transparent about everything? Or do you want to live in a world where people keep certain things secret that they don't want others to see? I believe in total transparency, in total truth. I also don't think you can run away from the truth, but I don't want to judge Dr. Parisa either. So let's resume back to our interview. People want honest leaders until they're honest, right?
That's right. They particularly do not want honesty about things like the economy. They just want cheaper prices. They don't want they don't want to also they don't also want to know what the great leader, you know what hand he uses to wipe his ass when he goes to the bathroom. They're not interested at that level. And when we go back and talk about like being honest with your partner, I radical honesty is great, but just know that when you make that choice, you must take the consequences. And when you
I agree with you, but that's actually another important step. So, I had this conversation for 4 years straight. Everybody's talking to me about personal truth and like, that's your truth and that's my truth. And it's like, guys, okay, fair enough. But there's something called objective reality. Yeah. So I would say that in the West,
it's just unavailable.
Yeah, but in the West, we come from Christian values, and the Christian perspective on it is pretty simple. You die for the truth if necessary. So
you die for your truth. I mean, on this, I think I disagree with you. There is some objective truth, but it's not particularly available. But the objective truth that is available, this is a table, this is a chair, is trivial. The more important truths tend to be subjective truths, and people That doesn't mean I'm a fan of alternative facts.
Yeah. This is
We have, but yes, but they're open to interpretation, and they're open to very different interpretations.
Yeah, but you know, for example, the guy who lectured me on personal truth, he was the guy who scammed me afterwards, who still has my deposit from my last apartment, who kept on making promises that he broke. And it's like, yeah, sure, buddy, I'm sure you like personal truth a lot because you keep telling yourself that you're a great person despite investing my deposit into fucking drugs. Fuck you. Yeah. The objective reality is that you're a dishonest piece of shit and that you're scamming me for money. Like, that's an objective reality, but he will say to you, oh no, it really depends how you look at it. It's like, no, it doesn't depend how you look at it, you know? And I think this is also where the progressive side of people who tended to just make everything about personal truth, again, to the degree where gender is your personal truth, right? Really opened up the doors to very, very dark and bad people, because my experience is these sociopathic people, these manipulative people are exactly the ones who like to spin reality, who put things into question. That's how Genesis 1 starts. Is God really God, right? Is it really? Is it true? It puts it into question. So, and that's just been going on nonstop in the last years. And I think we need to go back to a certain unification of what we agree upon, what is good. Yeah.
Well, I think that there's a wish for that. But you know the old expression, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. The once it's out, or the toothpaste back in the tube. There are a lot of movements around the world, nationalism, religious resuscitation, things that are ways of trying to cope with an increasingly complex world. And while I can sympathize, I have real sense of desire for things to be simpler. They aren't, and the movements trying to make them simpler for people,
That's right.
I don't think are working, and they're just adding to the complexity. The wish of this group over here to go back to Christian values is now in conflict with the group over there that wants greater liberal value. So we have just added another conflict. And we've also added a group of people who need to not see things that are going on in order to be, pure Christians.
But the thing is, a lot of the Christians nowadays, let's put it this way. When put into question in their faith, I think they would give it up quite quickly, a lot of the self-labor Christian these days. But I have to say, so you were one of the persons who brought me to this psychological interest in Christianity, because I think we're talking about Dante's Inferno and like the psychological meaning of that. And I dig deep into that, very deep. And boy, that's some powerful stuff. And I actually, I would even consider myself a Christian now again. So I was a baptized Christian. I grew up with Christian values anyway. But I went back to atheism while I was studying science. But the problem with science was just that the deeper I got into it, the less it made sense. Yeah. And then I had all these like moral arguments in the last year. So people try to argue over morality when it seemed to just come back to the same issue again and again and again, which is self-righteousness, that people just want to decide for themselves what is right and wrong. And then we're back to Genesis 1, right? You will be God, you decide, you will see what's good and evil, it's self-righteousness. And I don't know. I would say I have a quite spiritual perspective on Christianity. I do realize some of the Bible verses are written like mythically, poetically, and this kind of stuff. And the boundaries are sometimes difficult to draw, especially when you're coming to Christ, because that's like a historical person. But then there's some poetical, mystical stuff in there. But since I adopted that Christian mindset, which is, I would say Christianity is actually quite simple in essence, which is self-sacrifice for the truth, my life's at peace. I'm just like, okay, it's simple. If you tell the truth, then you'll get crucified symbolically. You'll be hated, but painted as the devil. But that again happened 2,000 years ago, even with Christ himself. And throughout history, it seems to be a pattern that keeps on repeating. Yeah. So there has to be some fundamental truth in it, self-evidently. And I do think if morality would be subjective, you would watch a Batman movie and you would argue whether Joker is the good guy. But you don't do that. So I think you don't have to accept like indoctrination from the church or from religion. You can experience right and wrong from narratives in the world. And if you're honest about it, I think you will find what is good and what's evil. So,
yeah, well, I hear you. I don't take quite the same lesson from the story of Jesus, because I don't believe he was crucified for honesty. I believe he was crucified. The more telling story is the one where he goes into the temple and dumps the tables of the money lenders. That's a more problematic act. Look, my understanding is that Jesus was not an isolated figure at the time. He was one of a bunch of people calling themselves prophets who wandered around the desert or wandered around the city and preached. And it's like, in England, in Hyde Park, they have speaker's corner and everybody stands up and they preach all day long, and that was what was going on too. He had a following, and that's where things got problematic, is when the way that he interacted with the established Jewish religion. Not because he told the truth, but because he was at war with them in a variety of ways.
well,
He was a pest. He made a pest of himself.
oh, so you have a very Jewish view on this, actually.
Don't get me wrong. Like I'm not siding with them and saying it was right what they did. What I'm saying, I'm just making a comment about why they did it.
But don't you think that he made a pest out of himself? So you're talking from the perspective of the Pharisees, from the established Jews. So you're playing devil's advocate.
Right.
Okay,
So,
I got you. Yeah.
I'm just taking issue with your statement. He was crucified for his honesty. I don't think he was. I think he was crucified because the Pharisees and the Sadducees said, this guy's a pest and we want to get rid of him.
That's true. But I mean, I think it's a complicated combination of facts.
They were crucifying a lot of people around that time. It was a common form of execution.
Yeah, but then you're coming to an interesting point, which is the resurrection. And I mean, from a logical perspective, you'll be just like, that didn't happen, right? But if you get into the objective historical facts, it gets very weird, because all the disciples to different times claimed that they saw him, and they were tortured to death. And not a single one slipped and said, no, it didn't happen. And I think that's impossible. If it didn't happen, at least one at minimum would have been like, okay, guys, let me go. It's just made up. Like, we're joking, you know? But they didn't. So they went all into death. And that's a very weird thing, you know? That's very strange at minimum. So, yeah. But, you know, the Christian side of things these days, a lot of young men are going back to Christianity now because they have an identity crisis, essentially. They're looking for a tribe. Some find it with nationalism. And that's where we should talk about this as well. So the young men are finding National Socialism really attractive these days, right? So because America has a lot of Jewish influence, which isn't surprising because after Israel, it has the highest proportion of Jewish citizens in the world, the US. And I get it, you know, there's a lot of Jews that are in powerful positions to a almost weird amount. But especially as a German, I have difficulties raising my hand up and being like, oh yeah, like Hitler was right. Like that's just something that I find difficult to agree with. And they're calling me a Jew or a fed when I disagree with them on this stuff. So it's funny, the left-wing dudes will call you a Nazi and the far-right dudes will call you a Jew. And yesterday there was a guy from the UK. So the UK is fucked, right? They're getting invaded by people who are not very good for the country, and the people are getting pissed. So he texted me and he's like, man, I want to fight. I want to fight them, so the immigrants, and we got to find a way to figure them out. And I was like, look, man, I get you, but you're going to end up in jail in the UK if you go and fight against immigrants on the street. And he's like, you're a Jew, you're a fed. I was like, no, I don't want you to end up in prison, you know? And I find that concerning, this kind of development. So what's your thoughts on this stuff going on there?
Well, I think at the extreme ends of the political spectrum, you know, they don't, the farther you are on the political spectrum, the less you tolerate, you know, apostasy, the less you tolerate disagreement. So in the far right and the far left, there's a real kind of catechism. There's a real orthodoxy to what people are saying, and you're not allowed much variation. I'm not an extremist, and I don't think extremism works very well, and that extremist philosophies take root and get power. Bad things tend to happen.
Yeah. But do you think it's the optimal breeding ground for extremism in the UK, let's say right now?
No, I think that extremism is arising all over the place. I mean, the UK, you know, 20 years ago, it was Islamic jihadism. You know, there's still ISIS. Two ISIS, you know, adherents just killed 11 Jews in Australia. You know, people are turning to National Socialism. There's a National Socialist movement in the United States.
Yeah.
At the same time, on the radical left, there's, you know, wokeism and identity politics, and you've got, you know, and the Me Too movement, and everybody, you know, you cannot, the guy who got ganged up on by the 4 women that you talked about. So I just don't think these extremist movements are very healthy, but they're all over the place now.
Yeah, but because why I ask you about the breeding ground is, again, this moral questions, this like, is this right and wrong? Is this right and wrong? So if you read Nietzsche for a bit and you saw how, I think he's a prophet, you know, and what he prophesied happened. We've seen it in the 20th century, and now we're in this like shaky moral ground again. I think the US is on a good way, by the way, under the line, but there's this right-wing extremism coming, and I'm not talking about people like Trump. Like Trump is not an extremist for me. I'm talking about these folks who call you a Jew if you disagree, and they want to fight people on the street with fists. Like, you know, if morality is no longer clear, if it's no longer clear what is right and wrong and what's good and evil, then you tend to have these movements because they give you a right and wrong.
They give you certainty. And
Yeah.
they give you a tribe that believes along with you, and they give you easy answers. But there are no easy answers. There's never been easy answers. And there are certainly no easy answers now. There's no easy answer to the question of migration. For a lot of people, the answer to migration is strict, stronger boundaries, stronger borders. But, we grew up the human race was migrating from its inception. It's the national boundaries that are artificial. And some migration helps. Some people work out. Some people don't. Some people get threatened. Some people lose their jobs. Some people get jobs. Some of the immigrants make your country prosperous.
But that's an important point, which also comes back to the young man identity crisis. So, of course, for the last couple of decades, the ethnic Europeans or white people, if you want to call them this way, have been decreasing, and the idea was to replace them with foreign migration to keep up the economy. And now, these young white men, especially, find themselves in a society where they were the bad guy. They were labeled as the evil per se. And for example, in my country, in Germany, right, these feminists fighting against me, they're voting for radical Islamists to come inside the country. I'm like, okay, you want to cancel me because I talk with a 17-year-old about masturbation? You got somebody coming in. He doesn't think you should have any individual rights. You realize that, right? So it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I do think that white young men, especially, were very targeted from a sense of resentment as well, because, well, white men were the ones who dominated society and the world for a very long time. And so it's very easy to make them the subject of evil and be like, oh yeah, they have this power because they're evil. They have the success because they're evil. Let's take them down, There's like this mob thinking, this slave morality, like Nietzsche puts it, Oh, these are the successful ones. Let's take them down. And I think that's what radicalized a lot of these men as well, that they were like so targeted as well.
Yeah. I don't think I agree with you on this one.
Okay.
I think, yes, white men have been in power for a very long time.
True.
And they didn't deserve it. They got it. Everybody who can have power, as a rule, tends to take it. Psychologically, you want power. You don't want to be powerless. It's always better to have more power than less power, psychologically speaking.
Obviously.
And it's better to be the slave owner than the slave. Even if morality-wise, it's probably better to be a slave than a slave owner. But most people, given the choice, would probably not be the slave. Having said that, I think the issue for a lot of white men these days is not that they are, not just that they are losing some power. White males are still more powerful than anybody else at least in America, at least in Western civilization. It's that they are a little less powerful than they used to be, and they don't like it. Nobody likes losing power, and white men have less power, and they don't like it, and so they are portraying themselves as victims,
But hang on a second, because we're talking about Gen Z men here, right? Like the young men, Gen Z to millennials, and no, I would disagree with you. I don't think that they grew up privileged. So I think they actually are one of the first generation of men, and now in a very long time, who didn't enjoy a lot of the privileges that generations before had. And they have these older generations, like you right now, telling them like, oh yeah, it's just like your power, and like you're feeling pissed off. And that makes them even more pissed off, because they're living in a life, they're living in a world now where economy is fucked. They've been the social like evil portrayed as that. And they also, I think that especially young white men have been the most castrated ones. So if they've been growing up seeing, for me, for example, Arabic men, foreign men, being successful with the women of their country or their ethnicity, you are a psychologist, or you've been a psychologist, this is the perfect breeding ground for absolute resentment. So then you have women on top who are telling them, no, shut up. Like, we're taking more of these guys in. Your power is gone. They're the new ones. They're the ones succeeding with the females as well. And I think that's a nuke bomb you're building with that. So now add a little bit of tribalism and like, so I think we're sitting on something really, really problematic here. But the positive side is that I do think a lot of young men are going to healthy ways of coping with this world. And even if it's Christianity, I think Christianity is even a healthy cope in a lot of sense. If you're doing true Christianity, like forgiveness, love thy enemy, confession, and this kind of stuff, I do think that's helpful. Or like working out, trying to like physically excel and these kind of things. Yeah, but I don't know. I see a lot of cynicism, and even me, I'm being a target. I'm trying to help them, right? And there's so many who try to get me down. Also, young white men hate me and try to target me and resent me for some reason. So, yeah.
Let's take a closer look. Like, so let's take a young white male in the United States. Okay. Or let's say the United States. And he's growing up now, and you say the economy is fucked. I don't know that the economy is fucked. I mean, it's a more challenging landscape than it was in 1964, but I know that America's gone up and down, and there have been challenging times like the mid 70s and the early 80s, and there have been boom times like the 1990s. So it's been up and down. Right now, it's a little more challenging, but it's not horrendous. If he wants to date, because you're a dating coach, so we'll bring it to the relationship between men and women. Okay. He wants to date, but he doesn't know how very well, because young men don't know how. I remember being a young man. I remember wanting to be in relationships. I wanted girlfriends. I wanted sex. And I remember how hard that was sometimes and how frustrated and angry I became. But I guess my solution was to learn to talk to women.
Yeah.
As opposed to, retreat back into a tribe of men and, simmer with resentment.
Fair enough.
And I there's something else. There's a biological phenomenon that I want to throw in that you probably know this. The peak of a woman's sexual attractiveness is 23. So when she's 17, 18, 19, 20, like early 20s, from 15 to 25, she's the hottest thing on the planet. The peak of a man's sexual attractiveness is 35. So a 21-year-old guy is not particularly sexually attractive. That doesn't mean he can't get laid. It doesn't mean he can't get dates, but it does mean he's going to have to work harder than he'd like.
Yeah.
And that's true, for white, black, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I mean the coping mechanism for these men these days, of course, to blame women.
Yeah.
We're back to Genesis 1, right? Like eats the apple and then blames Eve. So that happens. I do have sympathy for it sometimes, because the Western women, a lot of them don't make it. Now it's changing, but like in the last years, when they went so passive aggressive against me and like get me kicked out of places behind my back and shit like that, it makes it difficult for me to not agree with those guys who just say,
Yes,
"Oh,
absolutely. Look, don't get me wrong. Women in America are hard to date. They do not make it easy.
okay." So you agree. So because I left the West 2 years ago, right? I went to South America. I've been in South America 2 years, and now I've been in Asia for almost 10 months. That's a very different world. Yeah. So they are so easy to be around, right? It is such a different thing. So these Western women, they've also been fed with this nonsense wannabe psychology bullshit, where it's like, this is a red flag, this is a red flag, this is a red flag. Like, you have to establish this boundary, by amateur psychologists who don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. So they go on these dates and they, have this stupid influencer who told them about that's a red flag on a man, right? And then they spot it on the date and they're like, are you like a far-right conspiracy theorist? And like, no, shut the fuck up. I'm a moderate. I voted for a moderate party. Like, but some of them are so brainwashed. I don't know what happened. But the funny thing is, some of these Western women are going hardcore conservative now. Yeah, so there's even women in America who say take women's rights away to vote at this point, and who try to like create this obedience culture, even, which I find too far. I don't think that a woman needs to obey. I don't want to have a child. Like, I want to have an adult woman, right? But bringing it back to the topic, like the Latino woman, for example, it is so simple. It is so simple. If you skip the gold diggers who just want your money, if you end up with a decent woman, you don't have any of this nonsense of this political polarization, gender war, whatever. They will just have a decent conversation with you, and feel comfortable in their sexuality as well. Like, they don't feel threatened all the time, especially not in Latin America. In fact, they have this provocation, right? If you go to Brazil, look at how women walk around there. They want you to create this feeling that you want to fuck them, right? Like this is almost like a sin culture from a Christian perspective. It's like, oh, they want to create lustful feelings in men. But I have more sympathy with that than in the West, which is supposedly open. But I think they went hardcore conservative on both fronts. I think the left wing became conservative about sexuality with this Me Too, right? Almost Islamic vibe. If you go to a Muslim country, they separate men and women because they're afraid of sexual harassment. That's what they do. And that's not very progressive. And the right wing, they're like, oh, purity culture, virginity is like, and all the stuff, if you go out of the West, it's all gone.
Mm-hmm. Right. The West is complicated. The West is very, very, it's very much trickier to date. And I do think it has a lot to do with the fact that women have different ways of thinking about things, and they have gotten a lot more power, for better or for worse.
For worse. Oh, go on. Sorry.
Well, I believe some of it's for better, and I believe some of it makes life very hard for men.
True. But if we're being honest, do you think that a society led by men, I'm not saying taking women's right to vote, but let's say led by men, right? They set the tone, that wouldn't be like a more peaceful, more easy world to live in?
Well, that's what the world has been like for many, many years. So the question is, we don't have to look forward, we can look back. Has it been a more peaceful world?
That's a good question. I mean, but you have to say, let's take the part where you had democracy without women's right to vote. Taxes were much lower. I think in the US, maybe 5%. So less involvement with the government, less social issues. So I do think with women's right, you bring this neuroticism in because women score higher on neuroticism, right? And I think leadership based on neuroticism is problematic. Let's put it that way. I think you need to have like a rational, kind of objective, calm, stoic leadership to a certain extent.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. When I was a kid, not a kid, I was a teenager, I read a book called The Disappearance by an American author by the name of Philip Wiley. It was a science fiction book. And the the concept of the book was one day, at one instant, bang, the world divided into two worlds. And in one there were only men, and in the other there were only women.
Fair enough,
And he didn't kind of sugarcoat thing. He didn't. Oh, it was like, instantly, like, people disappeared. So, people driving trucks like disappeared out of the truck, and the truck crashed. And so and women, lighting the stove at home disappeared, and the stove blew up. So like there was chaos and destruction all over the world. And then he kind of watched the men and the women and went back and forth looking at how they handled things. And it took place against the backdrop of the Cold War. So it was very interesting the way, what ultimately happened, which is the men and women in both worlds, they blamed the other. The Americans blamed the Russians blamed the Americans. Little by little, they armed up, and the Americans, the men ultimately went to war, and the women found a way out of it.
Yeah, okay, but hang on a second, because there's been an experiment done a couple years ago. So they put 8 men on an isolated island, and they put 8 women. So that's not a science fiction book, that's reality. So the men gathered together, started hunting, catching fish, having fun. The women started walking the island in circles, and they almost passed out, so they had to stop the experiment, right? So I think...
Where did you read that? I'd like to read about this experiment.
I will send it to you. But to be fair with the war, I think that's valid, because I think even in chimpanzee societies, the more matriarchal societies are the more peaceful ones, right?
Even though they might be neurotic and they might talk themselves, that they might not go to work because they're busy talking about, and the men, go to war if there's something, that they don't like about it. So yeah, I guess I just don't want to oversimplify things and say, women are more neurotic, and therefore a government or a society that has more women in power is necessarily a bad thing.
It's a valid point. But again, they're making it very, very difficult for me to keep on supporting.
It's hard for you, I believe, and they're making it hard for a lot of, and it's harder. Look, I tell people, I tell guys, when guys struggle, I say, go to the Philippines, go to Thailand. You'll meet somebody who is much more agreeable, and it doesn't
Easily going, yeah.
it doesn't want to have a conversation about your deep feelings and question you on everything. I have a girlfriend, I love her to death, but last night she came in, it was like 11 o'clock, and she wanted to have a conversation about deep feelings. I just want to go to sleep. Please. And a lot of it makes a lot of things more difficult, but it also makes things in certain ways richer. It's less easy, for sure. It's much easier to date a woman from the Philippines than it is to date a woman from Los Angeles.
That's why I brought these issues up before, because I tried to get over these things. I tried to get over myself, and it did make me magnetic to women. I got laid a lot. I even had pretty attractive women in Europe and great relationships with them. But the price that I paid was career death, police at my apartment, public reputation destruction. And I think that's why a lot of men check out, because the price is so high. In the past, you were just like, I think it was even easier for men. I think what they should do is they should get their repressed thoughts and feelings about especially sexuality and that violent, aggressive side, that angry, resentful side, to the light. I think that's necessary, and I actually wanted to ask you this because you do know psychoanalytics, so would you say that's a good approach?
Well, yes, I do. I think it's good to acknowledge the feelings that you have. And I think it's also important, though, what you do with those feelings, because emotions are tremendously useful in helping you to make good choices. And I think that withdrawal into resentful sullenness is probably not the best choice. Taking pride in hating other people is also strikes me as counterproductive. And I'm an incel and I'm proud. It's almost a contradiction in terms, because the I of incel stands for involuntary.
Which isn't true, because it's voluntary, actually.
Right. Because now it becomes voluntary. So you're right. So, but what you're doing is voluntarily giving up something you actually want very much, which is to have sexual relations, to live as a man, as a man with a woman or with women. But when I listen to men talk, oftentimes they have wildly unrealistic ideas about what women are supposed to be thinking and feeling. So
How so? Yeah.
it's one thing to say, "Oh, women they now think all these crazy things," but I can tell you what they don't think. They don't think that they should suck your dick just because you're you. That's not what they think, and that's not what they're ever gonna think. And you have this idea that it should be easy for you. Well, where did you get that idea? It's never been easy for young men anywhere. It's at any time. It's hard for young men. They have to go to work, build a career, acquire resources, establish a family. It's hard.
And they're at war as well. So, for example, like, I think a lot of men, so because of the price, that I said that, the price is so high, because you have conflict with other men that want to fight you. Like, if you go out in the street, talk to women, and there might be like a dude who wants to fuck you up because of that. So you have to go to war. But I think that's what they need. They need that kind of, confrontation. The thing is, we socialize that out of them, right? With this feminized society, it's like, oh, we're all taking care of each other. You shouldn't make anybody feel uncomfortable. It's like, no, young men should go to fucking war. They should be competitive and driven. I'm not saying they should become a bully, but I think So, for example, I was bullied a lot as a kid, and last week there was this Japanese guy in a hostel here in the Philippines, and I was talking to this Colombian chick. She was from Medellin, the city where I lived for a year. So we clicked, spoke Spanish, good. And suddenly this Japanese guy sits in front of us talking really noisily, but it's a huge house. He could have gone anywhere. So even she asked like, hey, what's going on? And I was very friendly, did the Christian thing, like love the enemy. So I smiled at him. I was like, hey man, like you're good? What's going on? And he's like, you're talking very loud. And I was like, okay, we're gonna talk more quiet. Sorry about that. So we talk more quiet, right? I even try to get him on board and do like the right thing. Especially because I'm 28 now. I also don't have this like huge ego problem with like every man that's aggressive. I see it quite stoically. But he kept on getting more aggressive and he threatens me. I'm a kickboxer, I'm gonna punch you and blah, blah, blah. So the hostel owner, a woman, she tried to calm him down. She switches between calling the police and calming him down, but he doesn't calm down. So I leave. And then I come back and I avoid him, but he comes to me and I'm like, I will fight you right now. I'll fight you right now. So I'm trying to take distance. And then one time the owner is there at that point as well. He throws a punch while I wasn't looking and stops like right in front of my face, right? So at that point, I just take a scissor and like, get the fuck away from me, right? So he stops, but we both end up getting kicked out. And I was reflecting on this. I was like, oh, if I tell this to my mother, she will get neurotic about this. And it's like, Arthur, you always have problems. But it's like, if we really think about it, it's kind of like an action movie, right? It's like pretty Latina woman. It's like the bad guy trying to fight you. You have this conflict like with death involved, potential death involved. So it is interesting. And I think it's what young men need to a certain extent. They need that like, that action movie stuff. How would you see that?
Do they need it? I don't know that they probably biologically,
Yeah.
that's how young men are built.
Yeah.
They have a lot of energy and they have a lot of aggressive potential. And some of it's good if it's directed in constructive ways. That's how cities get built and inventions get created and businesses get established. I mean, that's traditionally how this works. And so, yeah, that it's a great energy when it's well directed. When it's directed at fighting each other, it can be.
But it was self-defense. I mean, from my perspective, right? I didn't do anything. I just took a weapon and told him to not.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm talking about his energy too.
Yeah, I mean, no, of course, that's too much.
Being well directed. I mean, why do you want to fight somebody when you can go out and make something happen for yourself with all that energy? It's just a tremendous gift to have that kind of energy.
Why do you think he became so aggressive out of nowhere? Because we're talking in Spanish, he didn't even understand what we're saying. Like, what would you say is like the psychological mechanism for that?
When you ask about that, it would have to be taken on an individual basis. It's quite possible he had built up resentment against you for things you didn't know. It could be that he was suffering some psychological problem. He was in his 20s. That's also not traditionally. It's often the time when mental health issues strike young men. So he could have kind of paranoid fantasies, kind of focused on you. I don't know. Without, knowing him personally, I couldn't say.
But that's the thing, because for most of my life, these kind of situations was why I avoided women, right? Because I didn't want to have that confrontation. But the funny thing is, since I'm kind of in that war mode, like I'm ready, they don't touch me, right? He stops before my face, but he doesn't go through with it. And before, they did direct violence to me, and they pushed it through because I didn't have that kind of energy, right? Like now I have this energy. I'm gonna kill you if you fuck with me, right? Like if I have to, like before you kill me, I'll kill you, and that shies a lot of men away. And then you have this kind of power where you're quite free to talk to any woman you want, but you have to face that potential conflict with crazy men. I guess that's just an unfortunate reality that's always going to be the case. But we're not teaching that to young men. We're telling them to be soft and vulnerable and all of that, which is cool. I agree. But you also have to see it from a masculine perspective. What's the real situations they're going to face? Because they're going to face these kind of situations. And I think if we give them the tools to handle that, then they're going to be more confident in pursuing their sex drive.
I agree with you. And I also want to add that teaching men to be soft and vulnerable can be healthy, but it's limited.
Yeah.
So we also have to teach men what to do with the strength and the masculine energy that they have at the same time. And so that's why I teach men not to be passive, but not to be aggressive either, to be assertive, which is a different thing. And it allows you to have all that energy and use it effectively without, at the same time, falling into passive obedience.
Yeah, and I think like my experience with the psychological institutions, especially the public psychological institutions, is they do not provide any form of resource when it comes to that whatsoever. So what in Germany, they're teaching men misogyny courses in school now. When they make a misogynistic joke, they have to take a lecture from a female teacher on misogyny. It's like, fuck you guys, seriously. Like,
Right.
Is that the problem right now? Like, you should have some guys like you who know stuff about psychology, but who also are able to socialize like a certain masculine assertiveness into them. But I don't see that taking place in the established psychological enterprise anywhere, to be fair.
So, right. So they don't make women take courses when they make jokes about men.
No, and in Germany, it's actually publicly promoted that they promote feminists who are openly hating on men, and they're seen as female justice warriors, essentially.
Right.
So,
well, that's one of the things that the right wing here in America is pushing back against.
Yeah.
And it's in decline under Trump.
No, that's why I supported him as well in the end, because it's like, no, I'm done with that. And Trump's gonna make a really easy process with that bullshit because he's sick of it too. This is like, yeah.
I just wish I liked other things about him better. But yes, I think that it clearly went way too far and then probably America and Germany the most, but
Canada.
And I was going to say Canada also.
So there was a pickup artist in Toronto. He got arrested last year. That's quite popular. So he had a sexual intercourse, and he recorded that with his phone to prove consent. And that turned around on him because later in the video it was visible that she had like a fear expression in her face, but he continued to have sex with her. So the judge said, you sexually assaulted her, and he got sentenced to 5 years in jail. But she didn't say anything, so he was supposed to read her facial expression that she's not consenting anymore. So they're putting people in prison, literally.
Can you send me information about that?
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I think the guy may have been going too far, but with the public statement, from what I read, he shouldn't read her facial expression. I think that's ridiculous. She has to say no. And in France, they now say if there's not a clear yes from the woman, it's automatically rape. They passed that in the last couple of weeks as well. So very weird. And it's no wonder that people like Trump become popular alongside men, because they will be like, nah, fuck that, otherwise I'll get sued too. It's just like,
right. Yeah, no, there's no there's no question about why, Trump is appealing to young men.
yeah,
They were living in a world that was just so hard for them, and it was only getting harder.
yeah,
He came in and said, I'm going to make this easier for you.
yeah. And otherwise you would be on the way to something similar like in Canada now, where you go to jail, like for this kind of shit. And yeah, UK is certainly on its way there. Germany's on its way there. France with this raping law is already there. And I think they're looking for the wrong perpetrator. Somebody with actually bad intentions with women. Not gonna give a fuck about these laws. You're only gonna hit the wrong people in the end with it. Pretty certain about that. Because, I also in Germany had these arguments whether I can touch a woman on her elbow without asking her for consent. It's like, fuck you. Like, are you serious? If you apply this rule, then what about 10 seconds later? You would have to ask for consent again because she changed her mind. So it is clearly impossible. Even with the clear no, it is very difficult because she can say no now, but it's a yes 20 minutes later. It can be a yes 5 minutes later. Those, especially with women, like men are very straightforward. They're like, I want to fuck you. But women, it's emotional shifts. And it's like, I don't feel comfortable now, but 5 minutes later they feel comfortable. So it's very, very difficult to navigate.
You know what makes it easier, in my opinion, is patience.
That's a good one. Yeah, I agree.
What I found is all women want to fuck.
Sure.
They may or may not want to fuck you. But if you're patient and you wait till the third or fourth or fifth date, you will know.
Yeah.
They will let you know. And the problem that I hear, like with things like, this consent stuff, often happens on a first date, a drunken first date. At a certain point, I got to the point where I not only wasn't trying to fuck a woman on the first date, I was actively trying to avoid
it. Yeah.
I had a certain, and ultimately what had started happening is women came on to me, not on the first date, but by the second date or third date, they were, they were leading me to the bed. And it had to do with, just being a good guy, an honest guy, a good guy, just, letting them know who I was and letting them make a choice whether they wanted to be with me. And then it got a lot easier. It just got a lot easier. But at the same time, limiting my patience. So I got both more patient and less patient at the same time. I got more patient, so I would wait 2, 3, 4 dates. But after that, I wasn't going to wait and be in the friend zone for years. Okay, you want to be with me? Fine. You don't want to be with me? Fine, I'm moving on. I stopped making friends.
That's a really important one.
I stopped making friends with women I wanted to have sex with.
Yeah.
Let me put it that way.
That's an important, with the one with patience, I think that's going to be the solution to a lot of this. I'll tell you why. So there's done a survey with teenagers, young adults, about sexual experiences, boundaries, and it came out that a significant amount of them would do things in an intoxicated mode of being, where boundaries weren't clear, something they regret later. So these young men, they are in these situations, they already grow up with the thinking they're sexual predators, right? Because they push something too far when you're 16 and they're like, oh fuck, I'm gonna get me too for the rest of my life. So it starts very degenerated and fucked up already. And then you have this hookup culture which pressured especially young men. So I did that, right? I got into this like pickup stuff, and you have all these like, oh, how many women do I fuck, right? And I was just like trying to get laid with as much as I can with, and totally using women as sex objects for my own desires. Totally fucked. And then I also pushed it sometimes more than was necessary. So of course, women also make it very complicated to see when it's too fun, when it isn't, you know. But I think the patience, you go on 5 dates, you know, she's comfortable with you, then she's not gonna change her. If you take her home on the first date trying to have sex with her, she's gonna be like, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. If it's the fifth date, she'll be yes, you know, and just go through with it. So
it won't even be yes. She'll be taking the lead.
sometimes. Yes, can be. But yeah, so that's also why I think that hookup culture is totally fucking society up as well, because also those violent biological conflicts, like if you drop the cultural narrative entirely and you bring out like the beast, you unleash the beast, open sexual market, open sexual competition, then yep, you're gonna have a monkey show. Guess what? And that's what happens. Like if you do pick up, it's non-stop status games, non-stop power games, non-stop competition with other men. It's a fucking circus chimpanzee fucking bullshit game that I don't even want to play that shit anymore. So, no, before we did this call, this is a stunning woman here in front of this thing, and just looking at me, and I just went up very carefully and said, "Hey, you're stunning," you know, and just chatted with her, got a date arranged with her tomorrow. And you know, I don't feel this like need to like prove it to my male friends that I can get laid with a beautiful. Fuck my male friends, like seriously. If they judge me based on that, then screw them. So, but to be fair, I was my harshest judge on this. I judged myself the harshest. How many sexual partners, and if I can get laid with this woman or that. And I think we need to get rid of that entirely. If you meet patience, a little bit of dating, a little bit of get to know each other, then a lot of these issues that you see with Me Too and all that bullshit are gonna go out the window anyway. So
Right. Sometimes, and I don't know where it came from, but young men have this expectation that a woman is supposed to want to fuck them on the first date. And I don't, maybe it comes from watching a lot of porn. Or talking to their friends or something, but that's just not the way it works. And
yeah, I mean, young men
that unrealistic expectation gets them in more trouble and gets them. It turns women off because they're much more aggressive than is good for them. And women don't like it.
Yeah, it's lustful. It's lustful. It's objectifying, which I do think is the original sin, right? Like in the Gospels, it says anybody who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery in his heart, and people always misunderstand that. But I really do think that the point being made is, if you are like, or fuck you now, like that's the problem, you know? If you have this like a lustful objectifying desire, that's fucked. It's hurting you, it's hurting her, and it just goes downhill from there. But I also think if you feel this feeling, he's also right in saying that you're already in the degenerated shit. Like if you process your emotions and thoughts, I think you kill a lot of these degenerated feelings, and you're gonna arrive at a healthy point of being automatically.
I'm not sure I'm with you on this. You can stop yourself from feeling lust. And what you can stop yourself from doing is acting badly.
But wait a second. So you're psychoanalytic. So the more you suppress thoughts and feelings, the more degenerated they become, right? That's just, isn't that psychoanalysis 101?
Not the more degenerated, but it can create problems. So I'm not suggesting, I'm actually suggesting you don't suppress the feeling, but that doesn't mean you have to, that there is only one thing that you can do with it.
No, I mean, if you release your shame and all this like these feelings, that you're gonna automatically see women more healthy. So it's just what happened in my experience, that you don't need to control your feelings anymore. You don't need to have this like reactance to it where you look, I feel lost, but I have to fight it. It's just you're approaching something more healthy automatically.
I wanted to do a little demonstration that that people sometimes find helpful, and it goes along with this idea of patience. And so, do me a favor and put us side by side so that I can see me. I want to make sure that that I'm getting this right.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you can see my hands. So this is about something I call leaning out. So you can feel as much lust and you can acknowledge as much lust as you want, right? But how you interact with a woman, if you're a young man, how you interact with a woman may ultimately determine how she feels about you. And what I recommend on early dates is something I call leaning out. And it depends on two things that I need to introduce, two ideas. The first idea is social distance. Human beings feel comfortable when they are at a certain distance from another person that they're talking to. And it varies by culture. So in Asian cultures, people feel more comfortable standing closer than they do in Western cultures, where they feel they need more space. But they don't want to get too far because the connection, the sense of connection is lost. So that's the first idea, that there's a comfortable social distance. The second is something that there's an unconscious, almost like proprioception, knowing where your body is at all times. And so when you lean in, lean out, your body knows where you are, and it happens unconsciously. So if I'm at a date with a woman, right? And what happens, and you see this, when one person leans in, the other person has a tendency to lean out. When one person leans out, the other person will lean in, and they are trying to maintain comfortable sense social distance, and their bodies are unconsciously telling them what's happening. Okay. Now, here's what that's the first part. The second part is this kind of proprioception. If I am leaning towards you, whether I know it or not, my body is telling my mind I am trying to get close to you. If I'm leaning away, my body is telling me I'm trying to get away from you. Okay? Now, here I am on this date. I'm a 23-year-old guy, right? I'm lustful. I'm hot for this woman. I want to get laid. I lean in. What does she do? She leans out. when she leans out, even though she's just trying to get social distance, her body is telling her, I'm trying to get away from this guy. And if he keeps doing it, she will the night will go badly, because her body will tell her all night long, I'm trying to get away from this guy. So what I recommend is, when you go out on dates and you want to be patient, you lean out, not in. Now, when you lean out, occasionally you can lean in and touch and then lean back out. Lean in and touch, do a little teasing, a little kind of playfulness, but primarily lean out and be patient and let her come to you. There are people like pickup artists who have a different, they know game at a different level, and they can lean in and do something different, but that's not the average guy. It's funny. When I was in college, I hung out with a guy who called himself, and everybody called him Horny Ed. And Horny Ed, and he was a real guy, and he was one of my best friends. And he became a legend at the college that I went to, which was Rutgers University. And he knew game. He just kind of he taught himself way before there was, the mystery method. He just was able to pick up women and get them into bed. And he tried to teach me and our other friends, and none of us could do it, but he did it. And I think he stopped keeping count of all the women that he dated. That's somewhere around 1,000 women by the time he was 25 years old. He was just in some other insane league all by himself. Me, I would try to watch him and do it. I couldn't do it. And eventually I just gave up. So I do something that works for me and works for a lot more guys than the Horny Ed method, which is lean a little out, touch and tease, be patient, and then by date 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, they are pulling me into bed.
Especially the pickup industry is so fucked up, but this is such a creepy bunch of fucking losers. It's unbelievable. I hate, Ross Jeffries and these fucking weirdo. I can't even watch that shit anymore. Even though, some stuff that I do is related, I can't talk to them, I can't hang out with them. I met with some of these dudes in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, 45-year-old, still does game, still is in competition with me, how many women he's led. It's just like, bro, you're 45, fuck you, seriously, what the fuck are you doing here? But yeah.
Is this really what you want to do with your life?
Yeah, and he thinks like a 16-year-old, I can't take this guy seriously. If he was be 25, I would see it with a little bit of a smile. But at this age, I honestly just think it's ridiculous. But yeah. All right, Michael, thanks so much for the conversation. I think we covered a lot of stuff for 1 hour, but it was very interesting.
Arthur, thank you. It was a tremendously interesting conversation. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really glad to have been here.